Hey guys, it's Mario from WATL, and today I got the pleasure of speaking with the very supremely talented Michael Theodorou. Michael Theodorou is, again, one of the top throwers that is falling into the category of right foot forward, right-handed thrower. He likes to keep his feet parallel, right in front of one another, and that's what works well for him, which is kind of odd. It's almost like you're doing a walk down a very thin line, but that's what works for him. And that's the key thing that everyone should be leading with is try a lot of different things, refine your throw and find what works for you.
Most people seem to put their left foot forward, and while I tried that, and I still do periodically, it just doesn't work. I lean forward just to get that little bit of momentum, and my left calf just isn't as strong as my right, I guess. So I take a risk every time that I would actually foot fault and go over the line. So I'm just naturally comfortable with right foot. They're almost directly in front of each other. So balance actually is one of my biggest issues. Everything I have tried has not worked yet, but I am constantly trying to find something a little more solid that is similar. It works for my throw, but it's why, especially in duels, Colby sees it all the time when we're throwing, where when I'm going forward, he'll just see my arm kind of do a weird motion, and I'm saving it. Because as I'm going forward, my balance moves to the left, let's say, and I'm just accurate enough that I can twist it off and try and save it. It definitely cost me points. More solid base would definitely help periodically with like a 5 that would have been a 6 had I been more secure, but this is pretty much the same stance.
Michael does mention though that he often finds himself trying to balance himself right after a throw, but again, that works well for him. And in order to get to the finals of the 2021 US Open, that's not an easy feat. So clearly something is working well for him.
If I can turn 1-5 into a 6 by figuring something out, it's worth all the effort I put into maybe this will work. 99.9% of the stuff I've tried doesn't work, but it's worth the effort because like the throw I have now, it came from constant experimentation. When I started, because I also put my hand on the axe as I come back, but for me, it has nothing to do with steadying the axe, or I don't know for anybody else, but for me, I just bring it back and my thumb is behind it and it goes right into sort of the spot in my clavicle. So I know I'm bringing it back to exactly the right spot. And as it starts collapsing my thumb, I know it's time to go forward. So there's no thought process in the throw. I've taken my own brain that can screw up a throw out of that part of it.
So it's almost like he's cocking it back until he feels the tension and then he releases the axe forward. Michael's grip is actually interesting. It's somewhere in between a pinch grip and a hammer grip.
So like John Depke, he's one of the guys that has the full hammer grip. I don't get it. Can't do it. Not going to work. I make fun of him constantly. His grip makes no sense to me, but it works. Mine is sort of similar, but my pinky is the most important finger I have. It kind of hooks up on the front. The rest of the fingers just sort of drape over, and then my thumb on the side. And they all hold it, and I just keep pressure at all times backwards. So at no point does the pressure change. The entire throw, it's the same pressure, so that when I release, there's no change in the feel of it, if that makes sense.
Michael tries as much as he can to remove as many variables as possible, which is very important when you're perfecting a throw.
I am never going to be Ryan Smith level of, 8.3 seconds to the board or anything like that. Everybody has what works for them, and you just try and identify those sort of things.
What was actually very interesting in interviewing Michael and speaking with him is the thing that he found the most bothersome at the US Open was actually the lack of noise.
I mean, how often do you throw in complete silence? That is just odd. But in terms of nerves, I think the main things are going to be one, experience. The more tournaments you go to, the less it matters. I mean, worst case scenario, like at Ironside when we were just there, I didn't have a great hatchet or big axe. We won duels, but like I'm going to another tournament in a few weeks. It doesn't crush me. Try and get better from it. I've played just about everybody in the sport at this point, like every great thrower, and I've beaten every great thrower that I'm aware of.
Michael is one of those throwers that was born out of the Quarantine Axe Throwing League. He practiced a lot, and he specifically requested to go against very specific throwers, some of the top throwers globally that he looked up to, that he knew were some of the best, so he could go up against them to see where he stood. Michael has beaten every single great thrower out there. And this is a part of all repetition, practice, so he's very comfortable now, and he knows what to expect in a major tournament.
Sam and Ryan Gustin have taught me probably more than anybody in the mental aspect. It's why I'm so aggressive. And I tell other people, if you're not aggressive, you're not going to win. And I would rather finish last in 8 tournaments and win one. I don't want to make $100, just make the money. That's not, I want to win. So I never want you to determine what happens to me. I don't always hit them. That's Mike essentially gave me the first game at the Open, and I gave it right back by missing the kills, which I don't normally do, but it was in my hands. I just let it go.
You can never look past anyone. The only person and the only challenge that you have isn't the person after the person that you're facing now, it's the person in front of you. Until you beat that person, you can never overlook them. You always have to focus on that current match, not what's coming down the pipeline.
In my bracket, I had all these people, Fancy Lad, Jason Yelm, all the possible people in my mind of who I would play. But because of Worlds where I was awful, it was the worst tournament I've ever had, and very disappointing because I thought I could do very, very well, but I was looking 6 rounds ahead. So when we went into the US Open, the only person I thought about was Andy Rice. He was my first round matchup. That's all that mattered, and it was one throw at a time. Try to go out, finish it perfect, and be ready for the next game.
Similar to Shane Shepard, he likes to sing in his head, and I asked him what he likes to sing in his head.
It doesn't matter what it is for the Open, it just happened to be I Feel Pretty. So that made multiple people laugh. But for some reason, it just popped into my head in the first match, and I just rolled with it all day. And I just stand there and, start just this little thing, and it just took everything else away. Just let me concentrate on this one throw. As I'm looking at the bullseye or the kill shot, it's just how perfect can I make it? Not just hitting it, it's I want to put it perfectly, split it right down the middle. And it helped because I missed very, very little. And when you can find that kind of focus, it's hard to lose.
Michael's core focus is just to stay locked in because he knows he can consistently throw back-to-back 64s, which is actually very scary, the fact that he can do that.
Guys like Mike just have had that ability to always be, or close to always locked in. I hope to be at that point. I'm still, like I said, constantly working on little things here and there. When things are working, when I'm comfortable, I don't think anybody can beat me. You just try and get it to where it's just more consistent over time. It's a work in progress.
Michael also thinks that the greatest thing to happen to the sport is Mike Philibom.
Skill in a long time. He has a throw that is a little more, I don't know, I just think it instinctively makes more sense to people. So they look at it and say, you know what, I can do that. Because I think we can all hit kill shots at a very high clip at this point. The main difference in Mike is he's always up by like 1 point. He never falls behind. So when you're going into 9 and 10, even if you hit him, you have to rely on him to miss. He just has that ability to always focus in every time and hit them. Mike essentially showed me that it's possible. And if he can do it, I know that I can.
I asked Michael about peak practice, and during Quaddle, he was practicing several hours a day.
So during Quaddle is definitely where I went from just a local average or local good player to an actual good player. Without Quaddle, I'd have been so bored. I mean, I learned so many different skills, figured out different stuff, but in the end, I probably threw, at least 2 hours a day, pretty much every day. Just anytime there was nothing to do, it's okay, well, I'm going to go back out and throw again. And it was really nice at the time because all of a sudden you're starting to hit some kill shots, but the tournaments is what really helped me.
Michael has tricep tendonitis, so he doesn't practice or throw as much as before.
And I think I'm definitely better now, but that has a lot to do with just a mental approach. And as soon as you put that smaller bullseye, for some of us, it definitely helps. It makes me a much better thrower by having that to focus on. If I throw on an old bullseye now somewhere that you go to, I'm all over this, like the old 6. It's a mess. I don't practice as much as people probably think now, but a lot of that just has to do with my elbow. I can't overthrow. So it's kind of like Big Axe. I'm working on my one-handed throw. I'm definitely getting better, but I can only practice so much with that before it just gets sore.
He attributes a lot of his success to practicing with Colby Dean. They used to work together in the exact same facility. And what that did is you have 2 globally top-ranked throwers constantly throwing against themselves. So it mimics what they would anticipate in a tournament format. And similar to what others have mentioned, don't just throw endlessly, throw with a purpose.
So I make the most out of the practice I get. That has always been outside of Quaddle where I just threw a lot. I never practiced without a purpose. So when Colby and I worked at one facility, I thought that's when I figured out my favorite practice, or what I thought was the best. 3 hours after we start, we just throw one practice throw, tap axes, and we go into 2 straight games against each other, something like that. And then we'd have to work for a couple hours and do the exact same thing. And we did that for months and months and months, and it mimicked a tournament experience. If I throw more than 30 minutes at a single time, like just say the same throw over and over again, I'm probably gonna make things worse. I think it's far more important to make the most of the time you have than it is to have more time necessarily. I just try never to have a throw where I just throw for the sake of throwing, because that might throw something off subconsciously that will take over in the middle of a tournament, which is exactly where I don't want it to happen, because that one throw absolutely can be the difference in winning the whole thing or going 0-2. Make the most of your practice. Don't throw just to throw. That will not make you better. If you want to get really good, practice with a purpose. So like Jeff, I know afterwards, he just threw kill shots, thousands of them. I mean, thousands of them. He was determined if we ever went to overtime, I wasn't going to win. And it was like, all right, fair enough. I mean, that's honestly, it's good motivation though. It's somebody who learned something and is now practicing with purpose. I think once you can hit a few sixes, start going for kill shots. They're just way too important. It's small, subtle things. If I don't hit it dead center, you did something wrong. Something in your body was wrong. It might be extremely subtle. It's finding those little tiny things. There is so little that differentiates so many of us now. Think about how many matches I've won or lost by not even a millimeter. You've got a pen mark, just a dot of something on the outside, and it's brutal to lose that way. It's honestly kind of brutal to win that way. But I mean, this is other sports are sports of inches, games of inches, but this is not. This is so exacting that you can win and lose everything.
He brings up a really good point, and it's very interesting that if you did not hit the bullseye dead center, you did something wrong. And it is your job to try fixing what it is. And for the longest time, Michael Theodorou spent weeks trying to perfect it and trying to figure out what that was. And he actually figured it out by accident. And it was just turning the hips. Everyone in the top ranked throwers, they've all tried everyone else's throw. They've all tried it out, but the key isn't to exactly copy or mimic someone else's throw. It's to find your own placement and to find your own throw.
Partway into that season, when it was clear to all of us except Lucas that we weren't going to beat our regular season, our actual season we'd already had, we started having fun. Next thing you know, everybody's borrowing everybody else's axes and throwing with their throws, and everybody's pretty accurate with it because you've all tried everybody else's throw. I can't tell you how many thousands of times I've done the Sam, or we do the Mike Kump, we do, now we're doing the Philibomb with the, we always do stuff like that. Everybody tries the Smith, but you're not taking that throw. There's going to be little bits and pieces from everybody's throw, and some stuff works. Everybody throws differently, and I find that really fascinating.
Let's hear Michael talk about Duels and some of the challenges that him and Colby face as Duels partners.
Same thing. You have to be aggressive in order to win. It's no different in Duels than it is in Hatchet or Big Axe. In Duels, if we have a drop or if something happens, I'm going right back to the 6. If you don't, you're giving up points. Most of the time we hit each other and guide in, as opposed to hitting the front or back. That's why timing's so important. It's why Colby and I think the main reason we're so good is we generally hit almost exactly the same time. You can barely hear a difference. So even if one of us screws up, the other one kind of pushes us back.
Thanks very much, everyone. I appreciate you watching. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook. We're going to be producing a lot more videos, and you're going to be hearing directly from some of the top axe throwers in the world. Thanks very much.